He's a billionaire. I don't even have to say anything on that. He is born with a silver spoon in his mouth.
The 21st Century Road to Housing Act is the broadest federal effort in decades to address America's housing affordability problems. President Trump surprised his party by refusing to sign the bill and calling it, quote, a yawn and, quote, so unimportant.
It was not only one of the most disrespectful things I've ever heard a president say, but it just showed how little he cared. Imagine me sitting in front of you and with tears in your eyes, you're telling me I'm displaced, I don't qualify for housing, my kids are on the streets, we're living in our car, and the person across from you just goes,
Shows how disconnected he is.
disconnected, doesn't give a damn. Some of you already have a cushy seat up in Tallahassee and Washington. How about one of you have enough chutzpah to look him in the eye and look your party in the eye on both sides of the aisle and say, enough. We have a country that is literally in turmoil. And again, if people don't believe that, come see what we see every day, hear the stories, look in the eyes of these people, that many that have done absolutely nothing to be in the situation they're in.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy Lewis from Imagine Marketing. I'm joined by Pastor Scott, who is the founder and CEO of Matthews Hope, as well as Shelley Bradford, who is the president and executive director of Matthews Hope. This podcast is produced, filmed, and edited by John Burkett with Imagine. Welcome to this week's episode of Straight Talk, No BS with Matthews Hope, presented by Imagine Marketing. At Imagine Marketing, we put in the extra effort to craft a tailored strategy for success. We also offer photography, videography, and even podcast production services. Book a free consultation today. In this episode, we'll be talking about the recent news regarding the affordable housing bill that became law despite the president refusing to sign it and what impact it could have on the local level. The 21st Century Road to Housing Act is the broadest federal effort in decades to address America's housing affordability problems. The legislation seeks to cut federal housing rules, slim down environmental reviews, make it faster to build homes, and limit the ability of corporations to buy single-family homes. The housing bill passed the Senate on a vote of 85 to 5, and the House approved it with a vote of 358 to 32. However, President Trump surprised his party by refusing to sign the bill and calling it, quote, a yawn and, quote, so unimportant, compared to the Save America Act, which doesn't have enough Republican support to pass. Scott, the bill became a law after 10 days, despite the president not signing it. But what does his attitude towards this legislation say about where our affordability crisis ranks in his list of priorities?
He's a billionaire. I don't even have to say anything on that. He is born with a silver spoon in his mouth. And before people say you hate Trump, I don't know Trump and I don't hate anybody. What I do recognize as a person who runs a nonprofit serving the homeless, that when anybody calls the housing issue a yawn, it was not only one of the most disrespectful things I've ever heard a president say, but it just showed how little he cared when he could have used it as a real win. I mean, he could have used this as a win. I don't think that instead what he wanted to do is hold it hostage, which basically means he's holding his party hostage. He's holding the American public hostage. And again, before somebody writes me a note, look, if you voted for him, good for you. Great. Fantastic. I'm only going to address the things that I have to deal with on a daily basis. And Shelley will tell you the same thing. We are seeing so many people displaced. You know, in the state of Florida, unfortunately, a lot of homes are owned by corporate entities that are investment groups, like Blackstone. We have a ton of the housing that sits here empty most of the year that's an Airbnb because they can look. I'm all for somebody making money. I understand that. But the other side of this is what we've done is we've taken a large part of the housing market away by it's an Airbnb. It's only used on weekends or it's only used during the summer, what have you. And they'll make more money than that, more than pay for their mortgage. And then you have those, we also have foreign investors that have bought that have never even been in these homes, but they want to have the asset. They want to own the asset in the United States. So It's an important bill. I'm shocked. No, I'm not. That would be a lie. I the fact that he said it's a yawn. I mean, think about that when you're telling someone who you're telling people what's happening. We're paying an amazing amount for gas. Uh, nothing, nothing that he has promised has come through yet. Okay, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. Look, I wasn't a Biden fan either. For you that think I'm a Democrat, I'm not. I am an independent who independently thinks and looks at things and go, that's bad. Okay. Imagine me sitting in front of you, Tracy, and with tears in your eyes, you're telling me I'm displaced. I don't qualify for housing. My kids are on the streets. We're living in our car, blah, blah, blah. And the person across from you just goes, past the American, say whatever that damn thing is he called. Okay. He is, look, if people want, I had a guy yesterday talk about how he's no longer going to support me because I hate Trump. I don't hate Trump. I don't know him. I despise some of his actions. I find it interesting that someone who has been convicted felon 34 times can run our country when in Florida you can't even vote if you're a felon. I find that interesting. Yeah, I find the rules are different if you have enough money to make them different. But in all that, you're supposed to be the leader of the free world. You are the president. You're supposed to be the president of all the people, not just the people you agree with. But when it comes to housing, and the housing is out there, it's available, but no one can get access to it. And all you got to say about it is it's a yawn,
Shows how disconnected he is.
disconnected, doesn't give a damn. I don't know. I don't know what
Heartless.
goes on in the man's head. Maybe if he slept at night rather than doing his media thing all night and actually got some rest, he'd stay awake during the meetings and he would do something productive. But that's what I see. And if somebody has a problem with that, cut me off. It's okay. First off, I've never asked anybody to be my friend. Okay, I am here to do it. We have a mission, and it's tough that when you're fighting against what's going on in Washington, we're fighting against what's going on in Tallahassee, and yet everybody complains about it. But all they're doing is complaining. They're not bringing anything to the table. And housing, quite honestly, is a really simple thing to address when it gets right down to it. But when you make it, I'm 4 years in to trying to get a permit for my transitional housing here on this property in Cocoa. 4 years. Okay. But I could build Alligator Alcatraz in 8 days and fully fund it. And then hang the Florida public with the bill. So, again, if that sounds like I'm against the Republicans or I'm against the Trump, I'm not. It's bad policy. It's just bad. And for you Christians and I use quotations there, those that aren't watching but are listening, you so-called Christians out there that are cheering this on, maybe you need to go back and read Matthew 25:35 through 46. Maybe you got to remember, love God, love his people. I mean, there's so many things I can tell you. I don't know what they're preaching in your church, but we have people that are hurting, and we have been called. We have been called to act, and that's what we're trying to do.
The president has also said that affordability is a, quote, fake word.
Jesus, God help us.
Quote, it's all about the interest rate. End quote, lower the interest rates, you can have all the housing you want. Are interest rates the only thing preventing your guests from having housing?
No, not even. It's so much bigger than an interest rate.
It's a piece.
It's a small piece.
Yeah, it's just a piece of all the different things. I mean, we have poor legislation coming out of Florida. We have overly we have done too much to make it hard to build something. The system is a mess. I'm not sure we can fix it because I don't think we have anybody with the chutzpah to ever go against the grain. Someone I did I tell you that I was called the other day to ask if I'd be interested in meeting with them about running for Congress? I didn't tell you that, did I? So yeah, and I got a kick out of that because that. Can you imagine me in Congress? Oh my God! First off, can you imagine how long it would take them to go through and sift through my past? I mean,
Lord
holy
have mercy.
God, help us! But the point being is that obviously I've said something out there somewhere that there's people that are going, yeah, somebody needs to say it. Well, let's make it easy on all of us. Some of you already have a cushy seat up in Tallahassee and Washington. How about one of you have enough chutzpah to look him in the eye and look your party in the eye on both sides of the aisle and say, enough, enough. I mean, here's the good news. Mitch McConnell has been off for quite a while now. That would be paid leave, would it not? And we don't offer that to the general public. I mean, I can keep going on if you want to play politics. Well, I'm not asking to solve all the world's problems. I'm saying, to sit there and suggest again that this is simple as an interest rate. No, the interest rates matter to him because he's a developer. And anybody thinks that he's not still developing. I mean, my God, how many airports are we going to name after him? Okay. How many roads do we have to name? I mean, he's put his money. Again, I've never seen a president in all my life be so determined to get his name on everything. And again, I would welcome that, and I could care less if something was happening to address what's happening to the American people right now. And unfortunately, a lot of the general public is so caught up in whatever they're caught up in, they're not seeing what we see. So here's your open invitation. And I said this to the guy yesterday: come and see what I see every day.
Yeah.
You come visit me, come visit Shelley, Shannon, Charlene, ask for a tour. Um, um, let us show you, and then make your decision at the ballot. Then make your decision on how you're going to do something to make your community better than how you found it. And the truth is, when we recognize that they are taxpayer funded public servants, that we're actually the ones in charge, what we were giving away our strength, we're going to get things like that taken care of. Now, the good news is he sat on it for 10 days and he let it pass. Like I said, he missed a great opportunity for a win because this guy is racking up losses left and right. I don't know how many times we can end the war in Iran. First we finished it in 2 days, and then we finished it in 2 weeks, and then we finished it in 2 months, and I think we're approaching 6 months. I don't know. It's crazy, but uh, all those things too are having an effect on what's going on with the interest rates. So if you know basic economics, okay, you understand that when those things are happening, it affects interest rates. So you want interest rates to go down? Go do what you said you were going to do. Finish the war, be done with it. Okay, Congress, do your job because we're calling it a war, and that can only be done by you guys, but you haven't done that yet. And then let's get down to, oh, I remember, what was it we ran on? America first. So what does that really mean? To me, America first means, okay, I can buy into that a little bit. Take care of your own. So when we can start doing that?
This act includes a number of items specifically aimed at making housing more affordable by reducing competition for first time buyers, lowering construction and regulatory barriers for manufactured housing, and financial incentives and grants for local governments that adopt pro housing zoning and developmental policies. Are you optimistic that over time our area will see benefits from this act?
Are you optimistic?
I'm not.
I can't say I am either. I'm hopeful. Again, doing this a long time, you cannot give up hope. You can't give up being optimistic about things. But when you just take it in the teeth over and over again, it's really hard to be optimistic about anything. We're in a war zone of our own, and and I'm going to keep pounding it home until the public and private sector come together. We aren't going to get any much done. Unfortunately, as Washington goes, so does Tallahassee these days, and so we're getting the double whammy. Um, there's so little being done. I mean, there's just so little being accomplished, that it's just sad. And again, you know, I'm not trying to blame it on anybody, but the truth is the Republicans are in control, and at least for now they are. And the sad part is that when the Democrats regain control, which they will at some point, that's how it works. I've lived long enough to,
We
we
watch the
we go
cycle.
this way and we fly that way, right?
Yeah, we watch the cycle.
Yeah, you watch the cycle, you see what's going on. Unfortunately, it probably isn't going to get much better under them either, and not until we decide that we're one country.
Mhm.
We're one country. We aren't the Democrats. We aren't the Republicans. We are one country. And we have a country that is literally in turmoil. And again, if people don't believe that, come see what we see every day, hear the stories, look in the eyes of these people that many that have done absolutely nothing to be in the situation they're in.
You mean they didn't choose to?
They didn't
Like you say?
choose. Well, choose to be homeless. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things. Yeah, find me one
Sorry,
guy.
didn't mean to make you go down
Nah,
that road. But
why not? Let's hit a ball. Yeah, I mean, nobody chooses to be homeless. That's the stupidest damn thing I ever heard in my life. There's people that choose to remain homeless because, quite honestly, we make
We
it
make it
so hard.
so hard.
You know, people forget. Unfortunately, they forget what it was like to even when they first went out on their own. You know, it's crazy. We talk about housing. 20 years ago, the first time homeowner was 25 years old. 20 years ago. That's not very long.
yeah.
Okay. Today, first time home buyers 40 years old. Do you realize that most of those people that buy a home at 40 or after will never fully own their home by the time they die? Is that crazy?
So
And they're
crazy.
literally talking about doing 40-year mortgages. I mean, my God, we already do trucks and cars at 7 years,
Mhm.
and that weren't even designed to last 7 years.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, there's a point where you sold your soul, and you got to back down. You can't just keep hitting the pedal harder. You got to back down and say, okay, how are we going to deal with what we got? I make my family a little crazy because I jump between CNN, Fox, WNBC, and everything because I want to hear the twist that each one of them is going to give
Mhm.
the same story. And I'm bouncing around. My ADD loves it. They don't like it so much. But one thing they all agree on is that in this war with Iran, I'm sorry, the conflict in Iran, uh, in this war, we have surpassed $100 billion on a company. If we were a company, if the country, as the country were a company, we would be forced out of business because it's such deep debt. Okay. How do you spend $100 billion when you're already in the hole, when you're in okay, trillions, right? And then you throw on top of that, that if we could find $100 billion to do that, then can you imagine what we could do in the effect of housing and homelessness with that kind of money? I assure you the budgets coming out of DC or Tallahassee are nowhere near those numbers. We could house every veteran, every one of them. We could house every single person with physical and mental disabilities that have outlived their caregivers, every single one of them. We could house every single mom
Mhm.
that has children. I mean, I can go on, and I defy anybody. If you can prove other than that, I'm going to invite you in and come here and show us what your numbers are. Show us what you know that we aren't being reported here. And this is not just being reported by CNN picking on the president. This is coming from Fox also. So there must be some truth to it. I don't know. I would, first off, we don't report a lot of things anymore either. But what we do know, I don't need to have a report to see what I see on the streets, to see what I see walking in our doors.
And we could house them properly.
Right. Right. If some people saw where some of our veterans are being housed, you would know why they choose the streets.
Mm.
Remember one of our guys a couple months ago, we got him housed and all
He
of a
didn't
sudden we
have
got a
any
picture,
furniture.
no furniture.
Yeah.
He's got, I go, when's your furniture coming? There was no furniture. So it was a hotel they converted into like mini apartments. Great idea. I'm good with that. But you don't equip them. And so basically he went from a sleeping bag on the ground to a sleeping bag on a concrete floor.
What's the difference?
I mean, well, he has air conditioning.
Well, true.
Okay. But I mean, come on. I
Still the
mean,
ground.
if some people saw what we see every day, they would be dumbfounded.
Shelley, on a recent episode, our guest, Reverend Mary Downey, made a point to distinguish between affordable housing and attainable housing. Can you explain the difference?
I hope so. I mean, there's not always attainable housing available that's affordable.
Mm.
That's how I see it. I think of when I was growing up. Now I didn't grow up in Florida, but I've seen plenty of these houses where these houses were affordable for the common person to go and buy these houses when they first go out and into life and get a
starter
job
home.
and a starter home.
Okay.
There are no starter homes being built anymore. So I feel like there's not that big of a difference because those those attainable houses that were affordable are no longer being built. Now they're building what we called growing up McMansions, which is what the persons that are buying when they're in their 40s, because that's what they're looking forward to now, because there are no starter homes available any longer.
Well, and the other thing is when you talk about the difference between attainable and affordable, it may be affordable, but how do you get them there? In when we talk about housing also, I want to make sure people understand that we're not talking about just purchasing a home.
Yeah.
We're talking about rentals as well. I'm old enough that when I got my first place, it was first and last.
Mine too.
Then a few years ago, it went to first, last deposit.
Yep.
And then after the pandemic, it went first, last deposit. And oh, by the way, to qualify, you have to have 3 times your salary, whatever your rent is. Rent being an average of roughly $2,000 for a 1-bedroom would put you at $72,000 a year. If you look at the income levels on the average person in the state of Florida, that means none of them qualify. And so that's the attainable aspect. They can't attain it because they cannot qualify on paper.
I wouldn't have.
No,
I wouldn't have.
it's crazy.
I'd still be living in my parents' bedroom.
And that's why I'm
Well, and I have a
Can go back.
26-year-old at home right now, and she happens to be looking for apartments. She thought she actually found one last night. Was kind of excited for her. She's kind of made a decision, and then the guy called back and said, "Hey, I forgot I rented that this morning." So that was joyful. But she had to find someone who she makes a fair enough income. She had to find an independent owner that would work with her, and those people are far and few between now. So that's a lot of the attainables. Yeah, a lot of these folks can. Charlie's son, who's 30, finally went from 4 roommates down to just to 1. These guys were all making a decent living. Not one of the 5 between the ages of 28 and 32 could qualify for housing by themselves.
Wow.
So they're doing a little bit better. So when the house was sold out from underneath them, which is exactly how it happened, they had to scramble, and 2 of them were able to put their together to be able to get into the next place. But you figure when you're 30 years old, my God, by the time I was 30 years old, I had been married a couple of years. I had children, and these people are just, people are talking about why young people aren't having kids. Well, a lot of them aren't having kids because, quite honestly, a lot of them aren't in relationships and they're still living at home.
They can't afford it.
Not because they're lazy.
Yeah.
Right.
Most of them are college educated. They know they have all the things they're supposed to have.
Right.
Peeling this back a little bit further, talking about where you have subsidized housing, that's really the affordable housing. And then you have to look at that because you say, okay, sometimes they call that permanent supportive housing. Well, is that permanent supportive housing, or is that supposed to be to get you to the next level? So you now get into attainable housing, a house that's in your price line that you can afford to go on with. The challenge you have is that a lot of times the way these things are set up, you qualify initially for that it's either subsidized or it's discounted. There's a lot of different ways they do it. But for term is, let's say it was discounted to $1,000 a month and it was normally worth $1,600, if you will. In the initial part of getting that, you have to qualify for that. But after a few years, they don't ask anymore. So what you also see around the country, and I hear about this all the time when I talk with people, is there's almost a hoarding, if you will, of that affordable housing. Because why would yes, I'm making twice as what I was making when I first moved in here, but I'm comfortable here. Why would I give this up? Well, when they don't give that up, then the next person in line doesn't have a shot in hell to get something like that. And a lot of that stuff isn't even being built or exist anymore. So you've got to, you know, when we look at housing, we can't look at it and say it's one. And here's part of the problem. Even the president is trying to say it's the one thing. It's interest rates, and yeah, that plays a part in it. And as a developer, I understand why he's saying that, because he's a developer and he often is borrowing money, but he wants to use somebody else's money cheaply to build his project. I get that. He's not wrong on that part. But for the general public, it doesn't work that way. It just does not work that way.
When one of your guests graduates from the Moving Forward program and heads out on their own, what type of housing is usually their next step?
I'll tell you right now what we've been talking about with our guests in Orange County, because many of them are about to be finished with school and they're looking forward to what's next. We've let them know, your options of living on your own are very slim. You need to find someone you like and become a roommate. And that's what I had to do. That's what a lot of people have to do. And I had to do that, 30 years ago, 35 years ago. I'm older than I thought I was. Um, I had to do that then, and that's going to be their way to save money, where in the past, we were able to save money and build up to buy a house. That's it's not going to be as easy for them today. So we've really been coaching them on, do you like each other? Do you want to be roommates together? Do you want to find a roommate? Find somebody that you are compatible with,
But it's interesting also to see how things work in cycles. Okay. Our economy has been this roller coaster for years. Okay. It just has. There's some things that have been done that were just bad ideas. Other times something happens somewhere else. There's all kinds of reasons why it's a roller coaster. But bottom line is, I'm a baby boomer, 64 years old. It was typical to have a roommate.
yeah,
Mhm.
Okay. And you go from roommate to get to that point where you could do your own place. And then
Mhm.
your own place went into buying a place. That's how it worked. The generation before that was families lived under the same roof, the grandparents, parents, and sometimes grandchildren. You have three generations in a home. And suddenly here we are in 2026, and we're going back to having the mother-in-law suite or sharing
yeah,
the home or having your kids live with you for a longer period of time.
yep,
It's all part of the cycle. The difference now is that the distance between getting from here to there
it's much
is
larger.
much harder.
Mhm.
I really feel for our kids, because I hear a lot of people in my generation talk about how they're lazy and that's why, they don't know how to deal with money and that's why they're living at home. I can't say that's not true sometimes. I'm sure it is, but that is the reality of it is they can't afford to live. The folks in my generation and my mom's generation, she's a baby boomer also, but we're 18 years apart. That just enough far apart was it was a whole different situation for them. Each generation has its own challenges. And unfortunately, a lot of the way we address challenges is for the immediate quick fix. We don't look like, well, what's this going to affect us down the road? And we're kind of paying the piper. And we've been told for a long time we're going to pay the piper if we keep spending money the way we were in the United States. So there's a lot of finger pointing on both sides of the aisle, what people have done personally and what have you. But the bottom line is through all that, where are we? Well, we have more houses than we have people, but people are on the streets. Make sense of that.
Mhm. This Housing Act also includes provisions for renters, including increasing the cap on rental assistance demonstration, encouraging more private landlords to accept Section 8 vouchers, rural renter protection, tenant resources, and more. Why is it important to be focused on addressing affordability in relation to rent at the same time as addressing affordability and attainability in relation to home buying?
Holy smokes, that was a lot.
That was a lot.
I will say that we have a section of our ministry that is privately funded, and we do help people with rent at times. And landlords are very much resistant to Section 8. And
Oh,
they make very, very sure that the help that we're giving these people has nothing to do with Section 8.
and part of that is there's a lot of things that you can look at Section 8 housing and say what's wrong with it or what is good about it. But here's one problem is when a landlord agrees to participate in that Section 8 and then they don't get paid for months on end, that doesn't work because those people still have a mortgage to pay. Just because they're renting place doesn't they've got their bills to pay. And suddenly to become the bank for the United States of America becomes a little tough. And so they're highly resistant to this. I mean, this funding opportunity came to us by a private funder. It's kind of set up in a way that if someone's about going to become homeless, we may be able to do one-time help, but it's one time. But as we go out there and we talk to the landlords and what have you, like Shelley said, super resistant because they're afraid that they will ask because I don't want to be in a position that I'm not. Nope, that's not what we're doing. Yeah. We also are in the ability to, if somebody has been homeless for a short time and doesn't have a big mess to clean up, which is rare, but when they have that situation, let's say they had an illness or something, so it wasn't so much they went deep in debt or they have a legal issue or a medical issue. We have the ability with this private funding to help someone get into a place with first, last deposits, the whole 9 yards, set them up in what they need. Again, the challenge is you got to find it, and we spend a tremendous amount of time. It starts taking us way outside our regular mission, but ultimately we're trying to keep people housed and get people housed as often as we can. But we're doing it in such a way that we put them through the grinder. I don't know a nicer way to put that. We sift through the garbage and we sit there and go, we're going to do this, but you call us next month, it's never going to happen again. That's how the funding is set up. So we need to make sure that they're in place and in such a place that moving forward, they're not going to need anybody.
They just need to get over the hump.
Yeah. So, and part of the challenge of the past has been, let's just get them in. Well, then what are you going to do next month? Even when we talk between ourselves or we talk with our advocates, we're always saying, what's the end game?
Yep.
Okay. I understand we want to get them in a house, but what's going to happen next month?
Right.
Okay. Well, okay. They've got a job. They're getting, okay, great. We see what's going to happen and we try to walk them through the process as opposed to just saying, here you go take care of this.
Sure. If there were suddenly 1 million more houses and 1 million empty apartments at reasonable prices, would our homelessness crisis disappear?
No.
Not at all.
Would the crisis I think of crisis as when I think you use the word crisis, I think of extreme. Okay, we have a homeless situation or we have a homeless crisis. I think we can get away from the homeless crisis. We will not get away from the homeless need.
Yeah.
Because the reality of it is there's just so many different ways why people become homeless. Okay, and we have the ability to react very quickly because of the fact that so little of our funding is taxpayer dollars. And so we can kind of shift on a dime. There's times we've made stuff up on the fly. We'll gather around, almost like a huddle and sit down and throw ideas out back and forth. And how can we make this happen? And if we make that happen, then what is the poke holes in it? I'm always telling her, I have this idea, poke holes in it. When I talk to my board of directors, I throw out a vision to them. I say, poke holes in it. What's wrong with what I'm telling you? And you kind of work your way through that. And then you go, okay, so we recognize that this, and this could happen. Not likely, but could. So that's the calculated risk you take. And that's the only way it's going to work. The problem is most agencies or ministries out there aren't in a position we're in to take a calculated risk. And their money is tied up in such a way that it can be only used this way. Okay. We've designed ourselves over years to not have anybody have control over our day-to-day mission. Okay, so we can get creative and make it work. But every time we do, the question always still comes down to what's the end game. Okay, one of the things we're looking at right now is, we're talking to guys that are about to graduate. We got several guys. God bless them. It's so cool. I'm going to hate to see these guys leave, and girls, but they're going through tech school. They're positioning themselves to make a good living. They're going to be fine. These guys are rock stars. When I say guys, I'm just talking about our people in general. That's guys and girls, but The other side of it is, I've shared before that right now, 35, 36% of our people walking in right now are baby boomers. So I threw out a term a little while back and I said, our program's called Moving Forward Silver. Okay. How are we going to discover the end game for those people? You know, my team in Orange County is talking about, you guys are going to probably have to have a roommate, figure out who you like. If maybe it's the two of you, whatever, figure it out. Now you take people that have been independent for the last 50 years and say, you have to have a roommate.
Yeah.
I jokingly say, and if any of my friends are watching, I guess I'm going to let the secret out. When you come to my house, you can knock off your shoes. And if you want something that's in the refrigerator, help yourself. Don't sit in my damn chair. Now, I've never said that to somebody, but I have my chair.
Yeah.
And if I come in my house and some company can come over and someone's in my chair, I get a little edgy inside. The anxiety pops up a little bit.
I think Thomas did.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm like, you're in my chair. You're in my chair. Okay. Now I'm laughing about that. And I've never told someone, get the hell out of my chair. But the point being is that you take these people who've been very independent, have taken care of themselves and done all the right moves to live the American dream, only to find themselves at an older age, unable to get the kind of work they used to be able to do and unable to afford. So now they got to have a roommate. That's tough. It's tough enough to take two young people. I was a terrible roommate because I kept my place super clean. My best friend Timmy Brown, if you're listening, man, I made him move upstairs because his family was doing Herbalife, and all he did is have Herbalife and wings. Can you imagine what that did to a bathroom? Tim, you're moving upstairs. Okay. Now I joke about this, but the reality was we're different. We're all different. And we all have little idiosyncrasies about ourselves that maybe we do know or we don't know. But now how do we bring these people together to get them off the streets? And we're starting some conversations, but I got to tell you, the first question they go is, well, I haven't lived with anybody but other than my wife or my husband or forever. I don't know how to do that. I'm going, well, your options are stay in the situation you are, and that ground isn't going to get any more comfortable, and that weather's not going to get any better. In fact, it's getting worse. Or you try to figure out how to make it work. Now, I recognize that there's people listening to this right now will say, well, they're homeless. They should just buckle down and make it work. Yeah, wait until you walk in those shoes and then make that comment.
Right.
Exactly.
3 years from now, how will we know whether this Housing Act had an intended impact?
I think 3 years is going to go very fast, and I think that it's going to be something that will not get a lot of attention. That is what I personally think.
My concern is that, like a lot of new laws that are placed into new bills that have been put in place as law and what have you, is that for the moment it gets the attention and then no one talks about it after that. My concern is 3 years from now, people will forget that this even happened.
Yeah.
My hope is that some people are elected from both sides of the aisle that have some chutzpah to them and want to drive it home. Matthew's hope does not happen because I started it 16 plus years ago. Matthew's hope happens because we're driving it home every day, day and night. I could have easily solved a issue 16 years ago of getting people off the streets while it was dangerously cold and walked away. And we would have called it a success. We said that was a nice thing to do. And 16 years later, someone would have said, hey, remember what they did back in 2010, got all those homeless people off the streets when it was dangerously cold? We should do that again. That's what could have happened. But instead, we recognize a deeper issue and we started pursuing what would be needed to attack that issue. But you have to drive it home every day. Sometimes I feel like a broken record. Because I'm repeating some things over and over again. I'm going to repeat it till you hear it. Okay. Because when I would love to be able to go home and say, we're done. It's all good. We don't have mentally and physically disabled people living on our streets. We don't have veterans living on our streets. We don't have the elderly living on the streets. We don't have the mentally ill living on our streets. we can keep going on. Or we won't have college students that are living in the
Wouldn't that
car
be
going to
amazing?
school. I would love that.
Yeah.
I would love that. That's not a reality. And I don't have any illusions that it is. But again, if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? We need to drive it home, and we need leadership that will drive it home and won't let it go.
Mm.
I mean, yeah, we can fight communism, and I realize that's a big thing right now. But let's get real, okay? We got a housing crisis, we got a mental health care crisis, and we've got the homeless crisis. Honestly, is a byproduct of the housing crisis and mental health
Mhm.
crisis. It really is, and I will bet anybody on that. If they go back and really start peeling it back, well, what created your homelessness? Those are two things you point to every day.
Yep.
Well, thank you to everyone watching and listening. Please like and share and subscribe this podcast to help us reach a larger audience.